welcome everybody to Bitcoin Live. With me, Nick, and with me are two of the superstars, the rock stars of quantum economics. I got the two Matts, Matty Sats and Matt Hatter. Welcome to Bitcoin Live.
I think you're mistaken. I am not in that category, but the high praise is welcome. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, but rock stars, I am not, or a rock star I am not. Matt's the rock star. Listen to his voice.
No, rock stars lights don't go out on them. No, rock star lights don't go out on them. My whole life just died on me.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Is that what just happened?
Yeah.
That's that cat. See, even on somebody else's live stream, we cannot get it right. The USB pops out, the cat comes along. Yep. Nick, buckle up, my friend, because this is going to be a wild ride.
Oh, man. I don't even know what you're in for, bro.
I was just planning to wing it. So, but yeah, you are the backbone of quantum economics, right? I mean, you guys do podcasts from Monday till Friday, and I think you do tons of stuff besides all of that. So can you tell us a little bit about your background for the people who don't know you, and then we'll sort of dive into the rest.
Yeah, Hatter, go ahead, jump, take the lead on that one, buddy.
I was gonna say exactly the same thing to you. My background, I'm shrouded in mystery, of course, as you know. No, I come from a real world communications background, so I did a lot of communication for different companies, including the British Army. And then had my own business, which was a restaurant. So I had a restaurant for many a year. Then COVID hit, and unfortunately, the hospitality sector took a massive hit. And during the COVID period, I found Web3, which is both a blessing and a curse. A curse in that it cost me a lot of money in rugged fees and when those protocols were all around that were promising you X amount of returns. And I was a bit green behind the ears and particularly stupid, so I chased yes, quite. And then stumbled into quantum economics and quantum expeditions, and really the rest is history, as they say. Although I wouldn't say I'm the backbone. Of course, quantum economics is Marty Greenspan's baby. I see myself as someone that's just there to help things move along a little bit.
He helps wipe the baby. He helps clean the baby. He helps feed the baby. That's what he's like, a nanny of the baby. That's the best way to describe what Hatter and I do. We're nannies.
Nannies? No. So don't sell yourself short. But yeah, of course, Matty Greenspan is the brain, is the man behind quantum economics. But you guys, you do a lot of podcasting, like I said, and I think also a lot of other stuff. But I think, let's focus on the podcasting first, because that's, your bread and butter. So how do you like the spaces and the podcasting that you do?
I think it's fantastic. I love working with this guy. It's nonstop fun. Obviously the platform has its challenges, right? I mean, if you've been any user of the app for any time and you've been on the spaces, they have a tendency to rug. It's not stable. But what it does is it offers a great opportunity for folks to connect, to exchange ideas, to share, to really kind of create an authentic community that's organic, that no matter, and this is a great thing that speaks about what you've done here at Bitcoin Live, Nick, is that, we've got people, all around the world. That's why we say around the world and across the web, whatever it is, wherever you are, this conversation happens and it continues, and it's great and it's fun and it's exciting to hear different points of view. So I love it. I just wish that Elon would fix the app, make it a little more stable, or maybe we had something where we weren't so dependent on just one platform that offered us this venue. But other than that, I mean, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm bashing X by any means, but I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit.
Yeah. X has his cures and glitches and updates that have to be, suffered.
Oh man, it's a good way to put it. Suffer.
Yeah. But generally speaking, it works pretty fine, and you guys draw in a big crowd with the spaces that you do.
Oh, we got my mom. She really helps out a lot, so we're really proud of that she comes through the room.
Yeah, Stephanie, right?
Yeah.
So you guys, you got like a core team or a group of people that always sort of tunes in, and I think you have, like, on Mondays you do sort of like a look forward to the week, I guess, and then on Tuesdays it's trading, on Wednesdays it's AI, and on Thursdays it's QE, and then on Fridays it's my favorite. It's all the wild stuff, the UAPs and Bigfoot. So
we get buck wild on a Friday.
Yeah. So which one? Which of those is your favorite? Like, of those 5 spaces, if you had to choose one.
Ooh, Hatter, go ahead.
That is a tough question. Which one is the favorite? Matt, I echo everything that you said about why we enjoy doing these, and I'm sure you'll ask us the story about why we even started to do them, and we'll get into that a bit later. But we're very fortunate to be surrounded by the core people that are supporting the particular shows that we do, and I think that came mostly from Freeform Friday. So for me, the reason why I like Freeform Friday the most, and it is the one that I enjoy particularly a lot, is because a lot of the people found us just through that random conversation. It's just something that is entirely unexpected when it comes to Web3 for the most part. Most people don't merge ghosts and aliens and out-of-body experiences, etc., with Web3, and it brings in a different kind of crowd, which is what we enjoy. So I think that's great. Tuesdays, I was never going to say Tuesdays. Tuesdays intimidate me massively.
I can totally understand that.
Yeah. So many smart people in the room, dude. It's so like just asking a question. It feels like I just feel so dumb the majority of the time. And I'm, asking questions through gritted teeth, just hoping that I don't get found out by Mr. Christopher Inks or bits of one. Matt, which was your favorite?
Yeah, I would agree. Like what Hatter said there, the Friday one really offers an organic, as we like to say, step out of the echo chamber and go beyond the block, right? And that's kind of what the whole idea was. And so that's been great. Again, the intimidation factor a little bit there on Tuesdays, but that's why I decided to join Texas West Capital in the Trading Academy. Not a shill for them, no reason, but just because I just wanted to get in there and see what they were talking about, at least get some of that education. So at least now I go, oh, the 200-day moving average, and this means, okay, I get that. Oh, I see the all these kinds of technical terms that you get from joining a great group and community. But I think the one that has really, I think, excited me the most that has really grown are the AI Web3 Wednesday spaces, because this is really, again, brought people from the community. I'm thinking like Suavecito, I'm thinking of Ani, I'm thinking of Rook, I'm thinking of a lot of the great folks that come through on the AI, and they're talking about, these are people that are actually building. They're in the trenches. They're like this deep in AI, right? And they're clodding and they're doing everything. I mean, there's so much signal and so much high value from these conversations and these people that you can learn from. And I'm so glad that these spaces are recorded. And so for me, I really love, again, there's a really great community being formed there, people sharing ideas, what they're learning, what's not working for them. Like, oh my gosh, don't do this. Maybe try this, suggestions and stuff. So it's really been a blessing to see how that space on a Wednesday is kind of taken off as well. So.
And I think you guys probably experience the same thing that I do doing these podcasts. Is they're sort of like free education, right? I mean, you and me and Matt, we all have to show up and do these shows, right? I mean, that's what we do. That's our bread and butter. But by doing them, you actually learn from the people that you invite on the show, right? And especially you guys with those spaces and the people that join. The amount of people that join and also the caliber of the people that join, like what Hatter just said about the Tuesday, with Fibo Swanee and Christopher Inks, and this whole lineup of technical analysts that are, the best of the best. I think, I think that's not an exaggeration to say that they're really out there. Like, so what is your experience from learning from all these people, and what have been sort of like your biggest takeaways or things that completely change your way of thinking or looking at things?
Hatter?
Go for it, big boy. After you.
We're being so polite. That's the English gentleman in him coming out.
Yes.
I think one thing initially, and I'll go back to the AI Web3 space first, and that is just thinking about coding and prompting and how you interact and how you engage with AI and some of the ideas and some of the tips and some of the suggestions and some of the lessons that these folks have shared have like made me go, whoa. And I'm serious. I don't know where. Oh, it's over there. I was going to say I could go grab I literally take notes. I snort laugh. Sorry. It's real. But I literally take notes and I'm writing stuff down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do that, right? So that's
But
one thing.
I mean, that's the point, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
And
then obviously none of the financial advice, but a lot of really good life suggestions in the Trading Tuesday spaces. Bits of Wealth is one of those guys that comes in, and for a long time he was talking about Solana. He was really he nailed it on the oil, just going long on oil and over the last couple of weeks or last month or so now. But a lot of the stuff in the Trading Tuesday, TradeFly is another one of those guys that has come through, and like I've taken notes down. I'm like, okay, he's saying this, watch this line, like that. So it's teaching me. Again, I can go back and take some of these things that they've said, and it doesn't mean that like I'm going to oh, they did this, so I'm going to put money on this, right? I'm going to go and do my research is what I'm going to go do. I'm like, oh, they said this is something. Okay, let me look this up. Let me look and see what I can. Do I see that on the chart? Is that how I'm looking at it? Oh, then it helps me learn to look at the charts better or learn what they're talking about better. So then it gives me a better understanding foundationally. So, yeah.
And you, Heather?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's been that we are in a very privileged position that we surrounded ourselves by people that are not going to bullshit us. Mm-hmm. They are not there to shill anything. They don't shill their own services. They don't shill their own accounts. They don't shill anything in particular. So we are getting a raw answer from most of the people that we speak to. And that's vital and paramount. And I appreciate that most, first and foremost, because it allows me to make an educated choice as to whether I decide to, for example, as Matt just said, jump into a trade. Not that I ever would, because of course their advice is always, you can't trade against me if you haven't got the experience. Go get the experience first. For example, with Trading Tuesdays, Matt mentioned AI Wednesdays and how much that's grown. Just the help that I've had in the background that nobody ever hears about from some of the speakers that come through. Free help too. It's not paid for. It's completely by choice to help me grow and help me implement X, Y, and Z for some of the AI stuff that I'm tinkering with. That has been invaluable to me, because not only does it help me and it allows me to grow, but it also keeps that fire up my backside, right? Mm-hmm. When you feel like things are slowing down a little bit, and we all have those moments where we plateau in whatever it is that we do and we don't think it's worth it, and we think it's, this is nonsense, etc. It's just keeping grounded and reminding you can do it. And I think those are the kind of things that I really value from the community that we've been lucky enough to be surrounded by.
And the grind. I guess you guys also experience the grind, right? So you doing 5 shows a week is tough, right?
Sometimes more. Sometimes more.
So yeah. how do the downsides? Like, can you guys tell us a little bit about how you go through that and how that's the experience of it?
Let's do it, Matt. I did say I was gonna come here to f shit up. I'm gonna get loosey goosey soon. So let me go straight for it. Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, the grind is real. I think one of the big issues is just the repetitiveness of it. It's not the repetitiveness of the conversations, but it's the same thing week in, week out, day in, day out. And sometimes there can just be elements of, how appreciated are they? How appreciated are the shows? You keep turning up, but sometimes some people have a very interesting view, and Emily mentioned this a couple of weeks ago in one of her spaces and our spaces, that X is more of a value taker than it is a value giver. So those that turn up to give value don't necessarily get an awful lot back in terms of just a thank you. Not that we do it for a thank you. That it sounds like we might be doing it for praise. We're not. But it's that value exchange isn't always equal, and sometimes that can be difficult to reconcile with when you're doing something like this week in, week out. We don't take, or haven't at least over the last 18 months, don't take meaningful holidays, don't take meaningful breaks. We work through those. If there's something up in the back end, most people are never going to know about it. So those are the hard parts, and combine that with just the fuckery that goes on with X and Elon Musk and his terrible team. Just you are on a roll, you're getting some great speakers in, and then suddenly, bam, it rugs. Or bam, you're not, people are being kicked out of the space, or people can't come up on stage. And it drives you crazy, because, part of this is about gaining momentum. It's about making sure that consistency doesn't just pay off in terms of the value that the listeners get, but we also want to get value out of it in terms of growing a reach, getting sponsors in, speaking to people that want to work with us, not just talk to us, and things like that can be a bit frustrating. So those are the downsides for me. Matt?
Yeah, a lot of that. He. I think that's the thing about him. We're like peanut butter and jelly. We can almost finish each other's sentences sometimes, and that's great having a co-host like that. And I think that the other thing is, for me, the biggest frustration is probably just the app. Really, I love having the conversations. I love listening and learning to really brilliant, dynamic speakers, folks who really know a lot. So I really think that the educational piece is something that X is missing out on. If they really thought about this and were really concerned about it, I mean, this could be a really great tool to educate, inform, and share information, no matter what the subject is, right? Whether it's, economics or cold fusion or UAPs or whatever. It's a great way to disseminate information. It just needs a little bit better infrastructure. But that's a topic for a whole other space. I think the final thing that I would say is, as far as the, if there was a negative side, I think it is, sometimes you just get, trolls, clowns, haters, but sometimes it's kind of fun though. Like that's why I think Hatter and I, we've always had this idea where, everybody, if you want to speak in a space, we will at least we'll give you the rope. That's kind of what we say. We'll give you the rope. And if you're cool and respectful and you're not, I'm just going to say, if you're not a dick, right? Cool. Great. But if you start getting out of pocket, then, off you go. Thanks. Have a nice day. You just hung yourself. We give you the rope. But we wanted to create a place where everybody at least has a voice and has an opportunity to be heard. Even if it's for 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or five days, right? We feel like everybody should at least have their 2 sats counted.
Yep.
So,
and I think that's also a big difference between podcasting and what you guys do with spaces. First of all, what you just said, the infrastructure on X, and especially for space, I find it incredibly tedious, especially if you're sort of doing the space or hosting the space. The microphones and all that. It's like, oh my god, that's why I don't really like spaces so much, especially hosting them. And then the second thing that you said with the trolls and controlling people in a space is infinitely harder than on a podcast, because first of all, on a podcast you can just invite the person you want to be on. There's not like trolls coming out of nowhere.
Well, that's why we do a thing we've started a little bit, and I don't want to give too much light to the trolls, but we have come up with somebody what we call like the troll of the week. And if it's really about like, oh, you get troll of the week, congratulations, you're that desperate for attention, we give you a special award. But
you should get like a troll hunter. Somebody who wants to.
Ooh. Hold on a second. I'm gonna write that down. Troll hunter.
Can you imagine that? Pairing up with someone who's just going to come for your account the minute you start trolling us. As long as we can go ahead. We can't just
love that idea.
Troll. You know what I also love though? Sometimes those trolls can be turned around. There have been times when someone has come in to be a troll, and they've quickly found that when the minute the trick with spaces is if you give somebody the opportunity to speak and you give them enough rope, it's going to go one of 2 ways. They're either going to go very dramatically in the troll direction and they know that they're going to get kicked off quickly, or they're going to talk themselves out of trolling, because you give them enough silence, they have to listen to their own words. Now they're having to repeat things because they're not getting that energy back, and then they just end up very slowly joining the conversation. So Matt and I, and not wanting to give away too much of the secret sauce, I suppose, but we'll have a conversation in the background and we'll be talking to each other saying, let this person talk. Just leave them be for a bit. Let them talk it out. Now, we're going to find out if they get offensive, they're off immediately. And we know when to interject. And it might be through humor. My mechanism is often to try and use humor or sarcasm to move it along. Matt will come in with, something punchy during a very brief moment of silence, and he'll take the conversation away out and out of their hands. But if you let somebody talk long enough, those are my favorites, when they start to, just eke around, and now they're not a troll. They come and listen regularly.
Yeah, I guess the most or a lot of trolls are also born out of frustration, right? And probably also because nobody actually listens to them and their complaints. So I think it does make sense if you give them the space in the room to actually air their grievances, that, as soon as they are aired, and like you said, you start reflecting on what you're actually saying. Because it's also, if you have a voice inside your head and you're talking to yourself, sometimes you don't really realize what you're saying until you say it out loud, and then you think, oh, that sounds completely stupid and ridiculous and nonsensical. Until you say it out loud, right? Let alone for a room full of people.
Yes.
So that
Even worse if you make them repeat it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did you say? And then they have to repeat what they said. Now they really have to. You're either going to double down or you're going to bail on what you just said. And doubling down is infinitely worse.
Yeah, and I just had like this today. I had sort of like a intermittent conversation with somebody who reacted on the Graham. I did the Graham tweet yesterday, Graham Hancock, which I greatly respect. I think he's a great man, and somebody who devotes 30 years of their lives to anything is, I think, somebody admirable. So I posted a tweet. I said, Graham, take a look at my article. I think you might find it interesting. You probably won't, but I gave it a try. And there was this guy, probably a Graham troll, who sort of reacted to the post and said, like, what Graham is doing is nonsensical. There's archaeological consensus. He's not a scientist. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Blah blah blah. He didn't actually watch the interview, turned out, and then I gave him another link to completely something else, which apparently he also didn't watch, but he sort of had his opinion about it. But my point here is, I was friendly and cordial to him the entire time, and he expected a fight from me to sort of engage and then burn everything down, right? And if you don't give it to them, like, it's sort of like what you just said with the rope. Yeah, if you give them a rope and you're not doing what they expect you to do, then often they fizzle out and disappear, right?
Yeah, the mute button works great too. I'm a big advocate of the mute button. Just man, I wish more things in life had a mute button. Man, that would be great. I'm gonna pray about that. We'll see.
It would be a very silent place.
Well, it's true. Probably would be. Maybe not. Let me think about that.
Okay, but then the question is, okay, you already alluded to it, but why start the spaces in the first place? What was the idea behind it? What was the drive to start the QE spaces?
Matt, after you.
Well, I remember it was one afternoon. I was on the phone with this guy. He's like, "Hey, Rod, you know what we should do? We should get together and mess stuff up on the internet." No, I'm kidding.
So
I had to work it in. I had to work it in at some point. I had to work it in at some point.
Shout out to Fibbo Swanee because he's just rolled through to say hello. So I want to say hello to Fibbo. I can see that he's saying hi. But it's come on, Nick. I mean, when people do the Dutch accent, it's also the most offensive thing you've probably ever heard. But this guy's English accent. It's that. I'm not going to do it, but that's that slightly soft.
No. Give me a sample, because I'm actually look. The British have a reputation, right? And they ruled the world, right? They had a huge empire, but they have also a very distinct accent, right? And they used to be very proud of their accent also, right? To distinguish them.
I mean, we have lots of accents. We aren't just identified by that Oliver Twist chimney sweeping accent that he does, the one that's set in 1789. If you want me to do a Dutch accent, and I do it a little bit like this, and it's soft and a little bit at the front of the mouth, and at least that's my family when they're speaking English. This is how they sound.
Yeah, makes sense. By the way, do I have a Dutch accent when you hear me speak?
Totally.
Yeah,
massive. It's massive, dude. Big.
So what about it? What makes? What gives you away?
Matt. My apologies, Matt.
That's all good. It's all good. I think I do though, because I had to just work that in as a slight fun. But we were talking one day, and I was like, wow, we really found that there was this chemistry, this connection. We'd been working together behind the scenes at Quantum with Matty Greenspan and the team, and so we had some calls as well. I think we were on Discord at the time. I think we were on a Discord group or something. It's been a long time ago, but we were like, man, we should do something together. Let's take this beyond just a weekly thing. There's enough out there under the Quantum brand and universe, and between Web3 and AI and trading and everything that we've been, that we were talking about. There was this huge Venn diagram. We just thought, like, man, let's expand the conversation. let's see what people want to talk about. Let's listen to what's on their mind and give them an opportunity to share in a safe place. And so we just thought, like, hey man, I've got the bandwidth, you've got the bandwidth. You know, it was almost kind of like, he's got the brains, I've got the looks. Let's make lots of money. The opportunity.
Why do you think I'm not on camera?
Yeah.
I look like a giant potato on legs. Yeah, we were also just we were having conversations. We realized very quickly that the best way to work, of course, in this space particular, because it moves so fast, communicate daily. So we still do have, every single day we have a conversation with one another. We check in, our prep is at least an hour's worth of conversation prior, and then probably about an hour or half an hour conversation after the shows, so that we can run through very quickly what we enjoyed, what we didn't, and then start thinking about tomorrow. And we were already and instinctively doing that before any of the shows, and then just said, well, why not? As Matt said, why don't we just expand that, take that voice online and just see how people react? And at first it was going to be a couple of shows, and it started with a couple of AMAs, and then we realized we enjoyed it. It's as long as you're having fun with it, right? And you can work with one another. And he alluded to it, that we're like peanut butter and jelly, as the Americans like to say. We work very well together, just in different areas. And there's an instinctiveness, and it sounds like we're gushing, but there's an instinctiveness to how we both work because of the experience that we both have. We're lucky enough to have quite a lengthy amount of experience in this kind of field. So it was just, why not try it? And then it started to kind of expand from there, and it grew. And then you get connected to all of these wonderful people, and you realize people are at times waiting to hear your voice. They want to catch up with you. They want to speak. They want to have their voices heard. And, we kind of fell into this really nice routine. And now it's also about not letting people down. We desperately don't want to let anybody down. So we want to keep showing up.
Yeah, once you have the continuation and the momentum, you want to keep it going. I totally understand. Do you think it helps that you have like 5 spaces a week, or do you think you would have like similar results with 1 or 2 spaces a week, or does it make any difference? Or
such a good question.
Yeah.
Well played, sir. I think it does help that we have 5 shows a week. I don't know if we would have the same results. I think we'd have the same results if we were both on camera with very clean backgrounds, doing it twice a week, versus a spaces that happens 5 times a week. I think it really matters how you're presenting yourself in this space. And if I had the, as he's already been mentioned by the slightly upset Krev, Gary Cardone background, and if I had his setting, his crisp microphone, then I think we could probably do 2 a week and experience the same result. But this is one of the arguments Matt and I have going back and forth with one another. And Marty, in fact, when you go on camera, you lose something. Mm-hmm. This is a very wonderful conversation, and we get to connect with you. So we're super grateful we get to do this with you. If we did this every day, we'd be very limited on who we can connect with. And the likes of Fibbo, who can't always come through on a Tuesday, but sometimes does, jumps up on stage and can give us some insights. You lose that, and there's something organic and fantastic about it. And I think it's that often draws people to come back and listen, because it's those moments that they're waiting for. Much like live radio.
I think spaces are way more dynamic and organic, like you say, because you have way less control over what happens and who joins, which makes it fun and exciting, and then opens up new vistas and new ideas, new speakers. So, and that also makes it very difficult, right? Because if you are the host, like you guys, it takes just way more management, and you have to way more anticipate and direct the conversation, right? I think it's very difficult to, like what you were talking about earlier, with sort of recognizing who is a potential troll and then managing the troll while also keeping the arc of the conversation going and doing the intermittent, you don't really do commercials, but you do sort of like the QE.
No, but we're open to doing commercials. So if anybody would like to sponsor us, the DMs are open. We will totally take stablecoin or Bitcoin. Okay. So DM
but
us.
It's a lot of work, but I guess with podcasting you get a different sort of public and a different sort
and the thing that I like about what we've been able to do, and I think this is one of the great things about Spaces, is that it reminds me a lot, because I have a long, extensive, over 25-year background of broadcasting and radio, and so the Spaces reminds me a lot of the old call-in talk radio. And you would never know sometimes who's calling in, and that was kind of half the fun and the mystery. Like, oh my gosh, it's Debbie in Detroit. Oh my gosh, she's a little kooky, right? But you want to hear Debbie in Detroit because she's kooky. She's going to be fun. You don't know there's that wild card element, right? So I think for us, that was that, at least for me. And I don't want to put words in Hatter's mouth, but for me, that's one of the other things. And to get back to your question that you initially asked, I do think that the consistency of having a daily thing, I think anybody would tell you consistency matters. You look at somebody like, I'll throw Peter McCormick out there, in his What Bitcoin Did podcast. This guy's been doing it consistently. That's what makes him one of the best at what he does.
Well, we actually had him on the show, our previous, before we got banned Bitcoin Live, when it was still Bitcoin Live instead of DB. And what he said to us back then was, consistency is key. So, you're right.
Tip of the cap to McCormick, man. He's one of the best. And so I think you see that. And I think that's true with, that's true with whether it's, X Spaces, podcasting, or even just like trying to lose weight or go to the gym. You see that if you are consistent in going to the gym and making smart choices, you're going to say, oh, look at this shirt fits a little bit better. And I don't have to wear a belt today. All right. Or
DCA your health, right?
DCA, exactly, man. Exactly.
Yeah. And one of the weird things also about Spaces, or at least that I find very difficult, is you got a visual here. I'm very visual oriented, and so it always feels very weird for me that I have this sort of floating voice in a space, right? Especially because if you're speaking, then you're the only one speaking, right? And there's no one there, right? There's people there, but it feels like there's no one there. So it feels very weird if you're sort of speaking into sort of empty space. But of course, with your background in radio, you are used to it, I guess. So do you guys also have that same sort of feeling that sort of, I find that super weird. So
Hatter?
Go on, dude. You're the man with the fantastic radio background and CV.
For me, it's a lot like broadcasting in a sense like that. So I kind of just default to that. So I'm used to just running my mouth like I have legs for lips. Okay, so that's not a problem, So.
But don't you have like the difference between like right now, you can see yourself, you can see me, and that you can sort of see something that you're talking to, and you see sort of the response, also the behavior and the nonverbal communication.
Yeah, the nonverbal cues are big.
It's all gone. Like there's nothing there with the space. Like you're just.
Yeah, the nonverbal cues are gone. But the great thing that I think when having a great partner like Hatter, and even on our team here at Quantum, and I just saw Steph Bot throw a shout out to her. She came through, and we work with her. She's one of our co-hosts as well. Is that we have a great like we are always messaging each other back and forth. Like, hey, so that's what I think that we all care about the craft. We all care about the content because it matters. We don't want to just be putting out crap content. Anybody can do that. We want to make sure that that it's cohesive. At least it's fun, it's entertaining, and it makes you want more. It makes you want to come back. It makes you feel like you want to be a part of a community and a conversation. And so we really intentionally try to manufacture a really smooth kind of flowing show, I guess you could say.
Well, I do think with Spaces you are way more. You're better at creating a community than, for example, with podcasting. It's very difficult to create precisely because it's more like a one-way street.
Yeah.
While with podcasting, it's, more interactive. So do you guys have the feeling that you created a community there?
In terms of, we've absolutely got a community. Yeah, of course. Podcasting is a performance as much as it is a conversation, because you are on camera. It changes the way you sit, it changes the way you speak into a mic, it changes the way you're reacting. Non-visual versus visual cues. It's funny, I work with Steph Bot. We meet every week, and I do a little bit of kind of run through in terms of what I do. So I'm kind of helping with coaching, and we talk about the non-visual versus visual cues. And With spaces, one of the things to always remember is you've got to be slightly unnatural to appear natural. What feels unnatural to you is going to sound natural to the person that's receiving it in the ear. And that's something to remember. And it's similar to radio. You know, the energy that Matt punches with when he steps into a conversation and when he opens up the spaces and the way that he'll play with his voice, the way he'll put a little gruff depth in there, that isn't a natural way of him speaking. If he walked around and did that all day, he'd sound like a walking
Is that true, man?
It's probably, yeah. No, he's spot on. Absolutely.
You know, so yeah, it's just about, it can be weird speaking into what feels like dead air. But if you just remember, I want to now play. I always see it like a game. I see these spaces conversations like a game of cat and mouse. And sometimes I'm the cat, sometimes I'm the mouse. And I'm always playing with the people I'm speaking to. And I'm playing with my co-host. And I'm playing with the regulars. And I just enjoy that juggling of when can we throw in something that's for the regulars that they're going to be able to immediately react to, and if they're on stage they might unmute and say something, because then that's how you create a community, right? It's by recognizing people. You see a name. I see JJ follows everyone Machiavelli in the crowd too. And you know,
hey, wait a second, hold on a second, let me try something.
You got to open that chat. They're all there.
Let me try something.
Oh, play it. Yes, hit it.
I think I might have it. JJ Machiavelli.
Yes, I want to welcome everyone to follow me. I will follow back.
Does that come through, Nick, or does that not come through? Oh, okay.
Right. Clear. Clearer than the spaces, in fact. Yeah, you know, so it's that's how you create and that's what I enjoy most. That's how you create a community, is just being able to bounce off of everybody on a regular basis. So while it might, I accept that what you're saying is it feels strange to you and you don't like it necessarily, and you are doing incredibly well on camera. It's just, I just see it as a game. And if you try and enjoy that game a little bit, and you try and, Matt and I are always playing something a little cheeky in the background with one another that has that kind of effect within the spaces. If any of that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely does make sense. But I do, you know, I have been podcasting for a long time. I guess we started in 2018. And of course, you know, in the beginning, it's, you know, you don't know what you're doing, and it's kind of scary, and you have to, you know, challenge yourself in many different ways. But I do find spaces more scary, I guess, to sort of more difficult, I guess, to do right. Do you also have that same the difficulty level, that spaces are purely the speaking part is more difficult than podcasting, that it's, you know, harder to do right?
I mean, not from my perspective. I find these one-on-ones far more intimidating than I do sitting in a crowd of people and talking. You know, I'd rather speak to 100,000 people in a stadium than I would one person who's really scrutinizing what I'm doing. I don't know why, but I find that a lot harder. No, I don't find the spaces themselves scary. I can find the topics scary, and I can find some of the people that might come up on stage scary. So I'm not, you know, I do get intimidated by some of the people we might speak to. And there are a couple of people that, even though I've spoken to them, you know, at least 50 times, 100 times maybe over the course of the X amount of years that I've been doing it in various different formats and spaces, I still get nervous when I know they're coming on, because there's just something about the way their brain works that keeps me on my toes and keeps me on edge. And like I said, Trading Tuesdays, it is a wonderful space. Same with AI Wednesdays. I walk into those nervous because I know I'm walking into a room with incredibly smart people. And as a host, I have to match what they're doing and then have the ability to move the conversation on with Matt by my side. And it makes it a lot easier when you've got a co-host who's fantastic at the same time. But just having to do that is, you know, it brings it to a different level. So no, I'm not always scared, but there are moments, of course, when I do get nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I have that too. I mean, for example, Graham de Penrose is a good friend of mine, but having an interview or conversation with him is really difficult and, you know, very intimidating, because the guy is just, you know, he's a walking encyclopedia, and his verbiage is sort of off the charts. So, and you got people like that, you know, sort of like, you know, what am I gonna say? Like, you know, everything I say sounds stupid or, you know, insignificant, or or
Nick,
even
I've made a career out of doing that, so believe me, friend, it's okay.
Yeah, I guess you also have to learn not to take yourself seriously, right? I mean, that's one of the first things that you learn with podcasting, and probably also spaces, is that which that you don't really matter that much, and it's more
Yeah, and I think that's the thing Heather and I have always said. It's not about us. It's about the people that come in, the people that share, the smart people, the brilliant people. And sometimes, that's because we are so open and accommodating. You're going to get some really high value signal, and you're going to get some noise that comes in a little bit with the riffraff. But I think at the end of the day, the community that we've tried to create, that we're still trying to create, that we want to continue to create, is one where, high value, high signal can come through. I put it in a word. I call it funformational. So it's fun. You're having a good time, but you're learning something too. You're like, oh, that was fun and informational. It's funformational.
Yeah. But isn't that the same as infotainment, or?
Okay, fine. Be infotainment. Being pedantic now.
But I like your term. Yeah, I've never heard it.
Funformational.
Yeah. So okay. So let's go to Freeform Fridays, because it's my favorite. Yeah. So what are the craziest stuff that you've heard on there? And let's start there. What's the craziest thing that you've ever heard on Freeform Friday?
I'm gonna say that one of the craziest things that I've ever heard, I wasn't present for, and I want Matt to explain what it was. But having listened to the whole thing, this thing was off the charts wild. I mean, it was coherent and incoherent in equal measure. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. It was a hot mess.
That's the definition of schizophrenic, right? Coherent.
Well, Matt, I'm throwing you under the bus.
Yeah, throw me under the bus. I generally tend to live under the bus. I feel like a mechanic under the bus. There was a conversation. Let's see. This was an individual that saw aliens, demons, all kinds of entities. Apparently, saw them while he was on the freeway riding a motorcycle, and they were reptilian lizards throwing giants off the moon. And then a dragon flew over his head, and well, I don't know how much I could, because I'm trying to keep this very PG.
But you're building up to the weird part, right?
Well, yeah, I'm building up to the weird part. I'm trying to keep this between the lines here, because a lot of the stuff kind of gets out there, and maybe the rated R version. So maybe I'm trying to keep this family friendly, if you know what I mean. But this individual talked about abductions, which I don't think is all that weird, but being abducted and taken to a lunar base, perhaps, that's different. Haven't heard that before. But the thing is, it's real to them, right? I mean, this is so authentic. They are telling you their story, and that's what I love to hear. Is everybody has a story at the end of the day, right? And that's, to me, what I really feel like. And I think that Hatter would agree with me. I think that's what we want in our spaces to be about as well. Is we want people to be able to share a bit of their story. If that's a trading story for Trading Tuesdays, and you can share about 5 minutes about a trade that you made, we want to hear those stories. Right, we just want to be curators of good stories and connect people and share thoughts and information, and let people decide for themselves and filter all that stuff out. Right now, I have my own beliefs about this individual story, and man, it was pretty fantastical. And riding a motorcycle through the desert with a dragon demon flying over you with reptilian lizards on the moon throwing giants at you, kind of weird.
Typical Tuesday.
Typical. Yeah. Average week. Yeah, I don't find any one thing particularly weird. When they all come at once like that, that's when it starts to get weird. Matt's right. In terms of actual weirdness, there is nothing that you can say to us that is going to rattle us, and we're going to sit there and think, oh my God, this person is completely deranged. And that's why we enjoy them, because everybody should have a voice and should be free and feel comfortable to step up on stage and speak. So you have to have an open mind. The weird part is when they react. The weirdest thing that's happened from my perspective, is when they react aggressively. And we had one UFO or alien abductee who is trying to make a name for himself, was doing the rounds on podcasts, didn't do one podcast. I don't even remember his name, but he got so aggressive in the back end, just via tweets, that after the conversation had finished, he's responding to tweets, laying into not just me, but other people about their thoughts on what UFOs are or religion. And that to me is the weird part, is, you've had a space, you've been given a platform to express yourself and speak. You've done that and people have listened. And for a meaningful amount of time, this person dictated a large portion of the space or several spaces. And then to get so aggressive when you read something you don't like, rather than just move away from it and let it pass you by, that part is the weird part to me. It's that. And this person was not young either. They were old enough to know better. It's the compulsion to then dial their story into everybody. And it's, you don't believe me now, that, you know what I mean? So that part is weird for me. But there isn't anything in particular that you can say that is, I'm a freaky dude in my private life. So there's nothing you can say that's going to scare me. How about you? What's the weirdest thing you've experienced? Let's turn the tables.
Well, I sort of noticed the same thing as what you guys noticed, that there's a crossover between crypto, Bitcoin, and this whole UAP things. So we started the bigger picture about 2 years ago. I think it's about running for 2 years now, and it's sort of connecting all these pieces. And sometimes it's all about UFOs. I still want to do one all about Bigfoot. As sometimes it's about crypto, geopolitics, all of that stuff. But yeah, we had some really crazy guests on, but mostly it's me and Siddharth. And so the thing that sort of ties into what you just said is, one of the things that I also find kind of weird is when it comes to UFOs and aliens and all of this stuff, which I find super fascinating. I have a background in philosophy and cultural anthropology, so for me it's like I finally can use my study.
Yeah,
it's an application of it. So, but what I find really strange is the dogmatism that you sort of notice, that sometimes they buy into a narrative or of what they or they really believe it for some reason, or a personal experience or an anecdote or whatever, but they turn it into kind of like a religion, and that if you're not in it, you're my enemy kind of sort of feeling. And then on top of that, you probably also have that social media mentality that you sort of transform yourself into a transmitter instead of a receiver, right? I think being a receiver is much more interesting and beneficial than transforming yourself into a transmitter, which just pushes out continuously whatever it is that you sort of put your hat on, hung your hat on, I should say. But that's sort of the weird stuff, and especially when it comes to prophecies, I noticed that there's a lot of people who sort of really starting to believe, which I find really interesting, that these sort of prophecies from Nostradamus and biblical prophecies and other kind of prophecies, that they're really real, right? And that they're happening. And I find that super fascinating, but also really weird, like that people really sort of block out everything else that other people say, or common sense or science, or like I say, that's sort of the weirdest thing that I noticed.
I think your point on dogmatism is spot on. This unwavering belief that their way is the only way, and anybody that comes in with anything that is even slightly counter to what they think, that person is dead to them immediately. They are the enemy. And we've noticed exactly what Stephanie is saying right there. We noticed that it particularly on Fridays, and it was a surprise to me, because I'm totally green to this particular world. I like it. I'm fascinated by it. I thoroughly enjoy the conversations, but it isn't anything that I've ever gone into massive depth on. So I'm there to learn, listen, and just be entertained and wowed by everything I'm hearing. And it goes from naught to off the rails in minutes. It's crazy to see. Like, it's just, I don't know what it is that triggers people. One person comes in and mentions the Greys, and my God, that's it. The people that sit on the other end of that. Yeah, exactly what, and Matt and I just sit back and go, okay, let's let them.
Let's let them go. Let them go.
It's the Greys against the Reptilians. Round 1. Go. Yeah. I mean, I do, I don't only find it interesting and fascinating. I do sort of have my own ideas and opinions. I do think there's something real there, right? So otherwise I wouldn't pay it so much attention. And so you do build up, or at least I build up my own framework and my own ideas, but I do it like as working hypotheses, right? Sort of like, and then like Bayesian theory, right? You update it if you encounter more evidence in support of it, and you decrease it or throw it out if you run into a brick wall. So I think it's really strange if you, because maybe that's also the philosophy background that I have, but because that's also all about speculation, right? These people, when it comes to UFOs, are just speculating, right? Unless they're sitting on boardrooms and talking to these people, we have no idea what Trump is doing. We don't know what UFOs are doing, if they're real. We don't even know if they're really real, right? So it's just strange that people have this sort of 100% conviction based on very little often, like. So that's
it's indicative of this space, though, isn't it? It's also indicative of Web3. We have a terrible, terrible way of poorly communicating why it is that we love this space, and our lack of ability to communicate it in an inclusive manner is why so many people don't want to jump into this realm. People that talk about being abducted just to the masses, we're within an echo chamber here, but anybody that comes in that expresses even slight disbelief to what they're saying, they get hung, drawn, and quartered right there and then, right? They are. Wow, dude! I mean, we've heard it, right? They get slayed immediately. But the problem is, you're not. It isn't just that one person that you're speaking to. You're speaking to every other person that's listening in the crowd, every person that listens to the recording, every person that speaks to the person you spoke to, or listened to the recordings that said these guys are nuts. Why? The minute I said this, or the minute my friend said that, or I heard somebody say this, and it's like a web, right? A bad review is going to reach 8 to 10 people. A good review, 2 to 3. So every time that negative experience is heard or experienced by somebody, it just goes out tenfold. And I think one of the I don't know what it is, but one of the reasons why Web3, by way of example, and I think maybe the UFO community and what little experience I have hasn't grown in the way that someone like Ulrich wants it to, for example. He's doing tons of good work in the background.
But like you guys, that he has also this perfect voice, right?
Yes, he does. It's just communication. It's marketing. Gary says it all the time, doesn't he? Gary Cardone is always saying, have we mismarketed Bitcoin? And I think he's absolutely right. Fibbo's always trying to educate people within the Bitcoin world, and they go at him. Yeah, but he's not wrong.
But it's like Sisyphus pushing a boulder up the hill, right? It's kind of like, you have to be that kind of person that does it. But it kind of feels like hopeless, right? But yeah,
you have broad shoulders.
I'm not sure, like if we mismarketed Bitcoin per se, right? I think it's just a new technology, and people are just playing around with it and trying to build narratives around it. And but I do think like the people who are actually sort of the core believers, or sort of the people who believe in the Bitcoin ethos, so to speak, of decentralization, right? I think their voice is just smothered, right? And I think partly on purpose, because they're building this financial casino around it. but yeah, so I think the marketing, and plus it's decentralized, right? So you don't really have a marketing team, right? So I was just talking with the Digibyte crowd earlier, and they also don't have they are sort of complaining about the marketing around Digibyte, but at the same time recognizing that we are a decentralized community, so we obviously don't have a marketing team, right? So it's sort of like word of mouth. So
yes, and you're right in that, and there is an element of Bitcoin being suppressed, and Matt will speak about this far better than I will. There is an element of you are going up against the largest machine in governments in the world, and it's impossible to fight against something like that. Marketing is also such a broad term. I think what I mean by marketing is just the way we ourselves explain the product that we love so much. I don't think we've always done ourselves any favors. And even when we come to decentralization, it's always us against the man. It's never been a collaborative thing. It's always been, we are taking back control. This is where we can have control. This is where we want control. This is what gives us control. Whereas all of those things are absolutely justified, especially when you're coming up against big banks, 100%. But saying it out loud over and over again is only going to create friction, and it isn't going to create a collaborative effort. And I think it takes for people like, I always butcher her name. Is it Lummis? Senator Lummis?
Lummis. Senator Lummis.
That's going after the Clarity Act. It takes for people to come and meet and take steps in the middle. And I think sometimes we, in this particular space, it feels like we are sometimes reluctant to take those steps forward.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Like to focus on, it's basically also what Paul McNeil often talks about. Like, you can focus on the negative, which is what most people do, like what you mentioned earlier. But it's much harder to, create this collaborative, positive focus and put your energy there, right? Because, that's basically what I like about somebody like Jeff Booth. Like Fibo, I'm a big Jeff Booth fan, but he's just, I mean, his enterprise, ego dev capital, says everything, right? It's basically you have to not focus on yourself. You have to build the future, right? You have to focus on the future. And then as soon as you build these alternative rails, then, build it and they will come, right? It's sort of like Noah's Ark, right? Even if everybody's just complaining and sitting in their little room and saying that the world sucks, right? And nobody actually builds the Ark, we're all gonna drown in. So I guess that's your point, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Matt is, like I said, he'll speak on this better than I will. He is a classic example of someone who, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. You won't mind me saying this. You're in the room with me. I don't know why I'm speaking to you about the third person. He was somebody that would go at people nonstop and smack them over the head with a Bitcoin hard hammer, like a metal hammer, and he would just beat their brains in until they either ran away cowering or wanted to fight back. And it wasn't until that was dropped to a large extent and he said to himself, well, this isn't working, how about I try a different tactic, that suddenly people started to listen, right? And I think that's my point, is, well, let's not always be swinging things. But Fibber makes a fantastic point. He said it in the comments, is how do you market something where people are coming into it for a plethora of reasons? And he's spot on. You're not just plugging one hole, you're plugging thousands.
Yeah. And I think to Hatter's point there is that we need to change the perspective of the conversation. We need to make it inclusive, right? And so for so long we've like Hatter said, you're wrong and you're stupid if you don't, that is toxic. That is, and I get that toxic side where that comes from. And so I've had to repent of that myself. I just man, that is not going to win people over to our side, to our viewpoint. And no matter what, you could have the best thing, you could show them the truth, but man, if you go about it the wrong way, people don't want to hear the truth, because sometimes the truth is hard, and they're like, and sometimes people are ready to receive the truth and messages, and whether that truth is, about Bitcoin or whatever the truth might be, some people receive that truth in a different time, and it might be different than your time, right? And it might be different than Hatter's time. And so we have to accept people where they are and where they're at, but yet be inclusive of them and change that messaging. Because I think, I've been in this asset class since 2017, and I've seen a lot of damage that I personally done myself, like, hammering people, like Hatter said. So how can we change that to be inclusive, to be educational, to allow people to feel empowered? And I think that's what Bitcoin really is supposed to be about, is empowering the individual. And I think that, that's what the ethos really should be, especially when it comes to self-custody. And I know that's probably a weird thing in light of what just happened with the cold card. But I still think that self-custody is a very important factor of the asset class. And I'll just, since since we're here and we're talking about it, it's kind of a coincidence how this hack happened right as we're on the precipice of clarity being established here in the United States, which would then allow banks to custody, right? Because you know for a long time, and Hatter, we've been in these spaces, and folks who are watching probably know self-custody has been also one of those issues that they wanted to get out. They don't want you to self-custody that. So if first they didn't want Bitcoin, but then it's like, okay, fine. We don't want people to self-custody. So how do we get them to give that up back to Fidelity so they can rehypothecate and all that stuff? So they scare you. Problem, cause, solution. So anyways, I don't know why I got on that soapbox, man. Hold on. I'm gonna hydrate. Hydration break.
I call it the incubation cohort thesis, right? So I think I know, I'm also in sort of this education business, and what I notice is, you can bring all the facts and all the information and thousands of books and whatever, and you can throw it at people. But if they're not willing to listen, if they're not willing to receive, it doesn't matter what you say. You can have all the truth and all the evidence on your side.
I don't have time to convince you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's sort of, like there's something that could change in the person in order to be able to receive it, and that's sort of, I think with my theory is sort of that as sort of the system starts to malfunction, and I think at the moment people do notice that the system is seriously malfunctioning. Then with each sort of malfunction, which grows bigger and bigger over time, as people like Jeff Booth also pointed out, more and more people start waking up, right? Either because they're hit by the malfunction, or they know somebody who got hit by it, or they are sort of just more open-minded and perceptive than most people, and they sort of notice these disruptions and weird stuff that's going on, and then they become spreaders, right? They become people who become aware of the issues. They become educators. They start talking to their friends, and then you got this sort of, after this cohort wakes up, you got another incubation period where they sort of start talking word of mouth, or starting YouTube channels and then reaching a lot of people. But all those people that they're reaching are still sort of unsure on the fence, and also often afraid to speak out publicly about what they really think, until something happens or someone that they sort of look up to starts speaking out, and then suddenly there's like a whole new group of people who actually say the same thing, and so it sort of spreads like a virus, basically. And I noticed the same thing with UFOs, right? So because the UFO field very much mirrors the crypto Bitcoin field, right? Because Bitcoin started off very small with a group of believers like idealists and libertarians and anarchists, like very small group of people, and then with each sort of time incubation cohort period, it sort of grew, and then the whole UFO thing that started basically in 2017 under Trump 1, that sort of started with the New York Times article, Leslie Keane, and the Nimitz video, that you sort of start to get attention, and then you get a small group of people start believing, start doing research, and then start talking and start spreading it, start reaching people, talking mouth to mouth, and then at some point something happens or somebody speaks up that they look up to, and then boom, there's like another group of people who also start spreading, right? So that's I think sort of how it works. So the UFO field is sort of like 5 years behind Bitcoin, right? And if it spreads at the same speed, which I think it will, then we're about to hit another milestone. Like I mean, look at your spaces. Like your spaces are huge. Or look at X. It's full of UFO spaces and all crazy stuff. I see here, but fear, fear is a big weapon. So, what do you guys think?
Fear is a big weapon. Yes, I agree with Fibbo. I'm waiting for the next Fibotopia post on that one, because he does the great little Fibotopia, or Fibopedia.
Yeah.
People as well. Yeah, you got. Thank you. Those who lecture or jam things up. Yeah, across as selling as believing it. Yeah, well said, Steph. Yeah.
I think what Fibbo is referring to is your point that it has to happen to them in order for them to start. Fibbo's saying he's got to run. I want to answer two of his questions, if I may. Steak and bourbon, absolutely, 100%. We aim to meet up at some point, and I am down for steak and bourbon, which he said. And question for us is, maybe AI could detect claims and show relevant charts. We have thought about that, Fibbo. Is one of the things that we've been discussing in the back end is whether or not we could actually implement Cora to start fact checking in real time. The problem is we'll have to juggle now an extra element of disruption, so we don't necessarily know whether or not that is going to be something that we could handle and do smoothly. And what does it do for the rest of the conversation? You know, how minute detail do you start to focus on? Because if you start to go too small, you could start picking up on mistakes left, right, and center, and then you start alienating the speaker. So it might be something that we do in terms of a summary of a space and then the corrections afterwards, which gives us the license to be smooth and free during the conversation. But people do know if they don't come with the right facts, they're going to get called out real quick after.
Yeah, sort of like a track record of speakers.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, and that's something that we could probably do, Hatter. And that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Fibbo, because we've kind of started doing that a little bit with some of the trading spaces and the AI, where we've come back with an article and a snippet from the space and doing a recap for folks. So maybe that's a great place right there for us to look to grow and expand. So this again is why this community is so great. We have brilliant people offering suggestions right here in real time to help make things better, and that's awesome. You're not going to find that in a lot of places, I don't think.
But the problem is, of course, also with consensus building and the facts, right? The facts can change, right? And we all know the story about Galileo, you know, who sort of, and Copernicus, you know, the world is actually round and not flat, right? So the consensus was, of course, that the world was flat, and they had all the data and all the evidence to prove it, which, of course, later turned out to be nonsense. But So you always run into the problem, right? That the fact checking is also sort of like you also have to check the facts.
Yes.
And the facts change.
Yeah.
Right. So
you have to be careful, obviously, especially in this space, because everything moves 1,000 miles an hour. Let me ask you a question, Nick.
Yep.
In terms of the UFO, and we have obviously seen, especially over the last 18 months, a massive uptick in the amount of people that are willing to talk about it, the amount of people that do talk about it daily. And those that are ufologists are starting to become or be on the rise. They're getting some massive podcasts. How much of that is keeping us happy versus the reality that it is actually something people are starting to accept because the information is overwhelmingly in favor that they exist? Do you not think there is an element of this that could well be something like a, certain administrations, certain governments that recognize that there's an appetite for it and can use it as leverage to keep people placated?
Yeah. I mean, that sort of ties into the infotainment sort of thing that we talked about earlier, right? So, and what you actually want to achieve, what you said with Bitcoin, right? So I do think, for example, with Bitcoin, that they don't actually want people to start self-custodying and start building rails that they don't control, right? So it's better to keep them busy fighting the machine and yelling at the machine and the man than actually doing something about it. And social media and the internet is a great way to placate people. And these podcasts, even though they're great, I mean, I love Jesse Mitchell's and all the big names, or at least most of them within the crypto of the UFO field. You do run into the problem, like, you know, are we just gonna sit around and talk about it and be entertained by all these, you know, crazy wild stories, or are we actually gonna move the needle and, you know, actually release stuff and, you know, get things done? And, you know, if just imagine if it's real, like if you actually have hidden tech or reverse engineered UFOs, or, you know, a clandestine group within governments or above governments even, right? Then that's like huge, right? I mean, that would be like the #1 issue in the world. So that, you know, we would have to find out about it. Like, you not only talk about it and be entertained about it and, you know, get the latest wild theory about it, but actually, you know, organize get together and do something about it. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I find this a fascinating topic because I can go back and forth on this. I flip-flop daily, especially when it comes to UFOs, as to whether or not I truly believe. I believe something's out there, 100%. I do believe that there is a higher than not chance they've been to us. I don't know if I can believe to the same extent that a lot of others do that they are living among us, look like us, cloak like us. I need convincing. And in terms of the tech, of course, there's tech out there that exists beyond our imaginations, let alone what we already know. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I don't know to what extent, whether or not, for example, earthquakes can be created from one continent to another.
One of the things that often happens is that people get hung up on the details, right? So, for example, if there are aliens, they have to be reptiles. They have to be greys. Or if you have greys, they can't be reptiles. That kind of stuff.
What about the tall Nordics? Where's the tall Nordics at?
Yeah. Yeah. Or with the tech,
Nordic lives matter.
But I think, what you said, like if you're sort of first, your first conclusion should be, is there something or is there nothing to this story, right? That should be step one. So if your conclusion is, after doing your own research and hearing all these stories, that there is something, well, then that's your starting point. There is something, we don't know what it is. Then your next point could be like, what are we talking about? Is it tech related? Is it spiritual? Is it are aliens walking among us? Is it all of the above? Right. So if you say, okay, the tech part, I believe, and there is something to it, then you still don't know, like, is it alien tech? Is it just ancient tech? Is it are they just super far advanced and are they not sharing technology, which could also be the case, or is it all of the above? Right. But then then you can move on to the next step, because then you have identified there is something, it includes tech, and then you can fill in the details, or politely discuss in a coherent, constructive way, the different possibilities, without sort of nailing it down into it is this and it is not that, and then you can sort of move forward, right? So in that case, right, we can sort of say, okay, there's very advanced tech out there. We don't know where it comes from and if it's alien or not, but we do want humanity to share in it, right? So that would be both beneficial for humanity as a whole, but it would also be extremely dangerous if it is not shared, right? Because then that automatically means that there's a small group, probably very small group of gatekeepers out there who is controlling very advanced tech, which we don't know about what it can do, right? So then, you would want to push for a release of that information, of whatever kind it is, and then sort of that way you can sort of move the ball forward and also keep everybody together as a group, right? Because you can all agree that there is something hidden, that it should be released. Let
me ask you, would that be enough? You find out that North Korea has some hidden tech that they've released the information on, and they tell the world, yes, this technology exists, we can do this, that, and the other. But you're now also suddenly acutely aware it's in the hands of the North Koreans, and we don't particularly trust them, right? Yeah. And you can take that theory and apply it to any leader that you think has nefarious thoughts, plans, or ideas. Is releasing it enough, or would it have to be on such a scale that if it's released, it has to be released worldwide and immediately available to everybody, so that it evens the playing fields? Because otherwise it's going to be, I imagine, quite large chaos and immediate wars as countries and continents start battling it out for control over whatever it is. So in that instance, I imagine secrecy, and I feel like secrecy and not knowing far outweighs the knowing.
Yeah, of course, it kind of depends on the situation, right? But you can sort of lift the veil a little bit on what we're sort of talking about, right? But at the moment, we simply don't know anything, right? We got a lot of speculation out there. People saying that you can cause earthquakes with tech located in Antarctica to, aliens zipping around the world, abducting people in Indonesia and wherever, right? And so we don't really know what we're talking about, and so it would help a lot if even what can be released is released. And I think sort of that is the what the US government at the moment is trying to do, is sort of slowly releasing whatever it is that they think that they can release to the public, and then sort of judging from the reaction of the public, like if they can take it one step further and sort of build it from there, which does make sort of sense, because it's sort of like stepping into cold water. You start with dipping your toe, and then slowly you go into it. But I think what you said about North Korea, and you're not gonna just disclose the whole thing willy-nilly, right? You're not going to throw it all out in the open unless you're sort of a hackers group like Anonymous or something. You get your hands on this information, you might do that, and who knows, it might actually be positive, right? You don't know. Maybe if you put it all out in the open at once and give access to everybody at the same time, it would sort of neutralize the whole threat of the information.
It's an interesting theory. I guess the danger is we will not know until somebody tries to play that scenario. We'll find out one way or the other, right? North Korea comes out and says, we've had this tech for 25 years and we haven't used it yet, guys. So we're not as bad as you first thought.
Yeah, but sort of, but you can also infer that very likely North Korea doesn't have this tech, right? Because judging from who they are and their history and the amount of power that they wield, it would be very unlikely that they do have like super advanced tech and they decided to not use it all.
I think that
it would be very unnatural.
I think that it comes down to a matter, and this is something that we've talked about on our spaces with Steph on the Thursday Powering America one, and it really is an overarching narrative that I think that it kind of touches on even in a lot of the spaces now. It's all about energy and power, and having creating futures markets for energy, for compute. I think that is going to be the next big thing where we're going, because just how futures work right now, like on Bitcoin or gold or any of the futures, like they're saying, hey, I will buy X amount of power from you for X amount of period at this rate, and they'll lock it in, right? So I think we're going to see this big shift. And so when we're talking about alien tech or all this kind of maybe lost technology, I think it really comes back around and it will stem around power, that maybe as the demand for power increases with data centers and AI, all of this, there might be, to me, that's how I see the disclosure piece alongside the energy piece, because I think most of us would agree there's been a lot of suppression of technology, especially when it comes to energy, free energy, 0 point energy, whatever you want to call it, that there's been enough research out there, enough scientists have mysteriously got run over by buses or whatever, right? They've unfortunately been silenced. But there's enough out there over the last 50 years, 100 years now to substantiate that this technology exists. And it's going to take something, I think, of that magnitude to say, okay, it all comes out in that nature. So I think it really, though, the alien piece, technology piece goes with the power piece. That's how I see it. No,
absolutely. And I think it's also very interesting that Bitcoin, that energy and power plays a very big role in Bitcoin, right? So I do think that there's this intersection between Bitcoin, UFOs, energy, and technology, right? I think those three elements are connected. That has always been sort of my idea. And with AI, I find AI also very interesting in this story, right? Because you got a lot of people speculating, of course, about AI, and is it conscious, is it sentient, is it not sentient? Can we reach AGI? Can we reach ASI, right? And then you got a lot of people like myself who are totally not experts in AI, who have opinions about it, and sometimes strong opinions about it, and then everybody's sort of talking about it and speculating. But what? For example, you got people who make the case that for example, with aliens, portals, interdimensional beings, you get these stories about that AI, that they're sort of creating portals to summon intelligence, right? Intelligence is supposedly all around us anyway. Like, people like Robert Temple wrote A New Science of Heaven. I'm looking at the book right now. It's a great book. He's done a ton of research, and sort of the Office of Naval Intelligence plays a big role. And there's also cross connections with Nazis and Operation Paperclip and all of that stuff. But what I'm actually trying to say is, what if we are actually acclimatized to aliens by actually interacting with them now on a daily basis, because everybody's speaking to their AI, sometimes having relationships with them. It gets really personal. Sometimes you got entire sects, the spiral sect that's based around AI, and you got different religious groups centered around AI. So, what if they're sort of building up to the release of saying like, yeah, okay, aliens are actually AI, or aliens seeded AI, right? Like, the day after Roswell, what's his name? Philip Corso. He was sort of very high into the government of Eisenhower, right? He was a pretty big or an important official within the U.S. Army, I think. And he wrote a book about explicitly seeding stuff connected to the internet, like silicon and
Right.
basically what we're now
Transistor, all that stuff. Yeah.
So who knows, right? So I mean, we don't really know what we're dealing with, and also why they want to release it now, right? So and I think the place most likely where most of the UFO stuff is hidden is probably the US, right? That makes the most sense, right? It's the superpower.
Well, it ain't in Fiji, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and probably also not North Korea.
Probably not a lot of room in Fiji.
But China is a different matter, right? I think China is up and coming, and I think that plays a big role in the release of this information. That's sort of my take. That's the geopolitical dimension to this story, in my opinion, my humble opinion.
I want to dial in something you said and ask a question on that. The idea that AI came from alien or alien species, plural, terrifies me, because if it did, then it means it isn't just about X's and O's. Or if it is, it's about far more sophisticated X's and O's beyond what we understand and can comprehend. And therefore, what we are playing with and enjoying right now and speaking to is, like you say, something that is designed purely and only to prime us for something else, rather than it being something that we are co-creating together by all being part in some way, because we are all part of its training in some way, whether we like it or not, every time that we talk to it, right? Especially with the large LLMs. That terrifies me. Does it not scare you, the idea that if that is the case, it wouldn't just be about desensitizing us to what it would be like to now speak to something that isn't of Earth, I guess, especially if it was only through text or voice, because we're used to that, like you say, we're being primed. It may be different if a little green man came and stood in front of me. I'd like to think I'd enjoy the conversation, but I'd probably be shitting my pants for half an hour beforehand. But doesn't that scare you, just the idea that now there's something that has been introduced into our daily lives en masse that we now have zero control over?
Oh, no, that's not exactly how I see it. Like, first of all, like, we already reached the point that there's something out there, right? So it's either something related to AI or not. But, even if it's not, even if my speculation is completely wrong and it's something totally different, from the stories that we gather, if they are true, it's all around us anyway, right? And if it's all around us anyway, so some people claim that governments haven't released this information because if they did, it would show that they have no control over their airspace, right?
Mhm.
Which is, sort of like a national security concern. That was sort of the first line of argument that, in 2017 they came out with, which makes sense, right? Because you're like America, you're a superpower, you want to project power and stability, and then, oh yeah, but we don't control our airspace because there's, UFOs flying around and we don't know what it is, right? So I don't find that scary, right? If they told me that they don't have no control over their airspace and that there's, little green men in flying saucers flying around, I would find it fascinating. I do know that they would find it scary, right? Because that means that people, one of the really interesting, I wrote a piece like The Eternal Oracle, which I actually linked to Graham Hancock. And what I had a train of thought. It was, and I lost it there. But maybe it will pop back. But God, what was it?
You were talking about airspace. The idea that, Matt, can you imagine if the US had to confess and agree that they have no control over the airspace? How do you think, you're US bound, how do you think?
I'm just going to remind you, just a couple of years back, we had a balloon.
Yeah.
A balloon. We couldn't control a balloon, Hatter. That's all I got to say. Balloon.
Well,
it's fun to say it like that. Balloon. We can't control our airspace with a freaking balloon.
Why wasn't that just shot out of the sky?
Yeah, the whole balloon story is really weird. It's and it's basically also unresolved, right? Because it's totally unclear what happened there, at least in my opinion. From what I've gathered, is that it's kind of like what happened with Roswell, right? When you look into the case with Roswell, they changed their story multiple times. The Air Force. And at first it was also a balloon. It was a weather balloon, right? So, and then it were crash test dummies that they threw out of planes before they did that. And then it was this, and then it was that. But also with Roswell, you got The Children of Roswell. It's a famous book, and that book only tracks what happened to the witnesses and the families of those witnesses who saw what happened at Roswell. So it's not about speculation about, did Roswell happen or did it not happen? It just traced what happened to the people who thought it happened. Well, if you just look at that and what happened to those people, then, clearly from the government's perspective, it was not a weather balloon because, these people were harassed and much worse than just harassed. And
why are you harassing people over a weather balloon? I mean, come on. If it's just
or crash dummies that they threw out of planes, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So there's all these kind of trails, like really factual trails of like really concrete human beings that you can just follow, and then that will tell you information about what we're dealing with. But yeah, with AI, I think it would be fascinating, right? If what we're building is actually sort of a platform to receive intelligence on, and that it can sort of be embodied, at first like in a digital ethereal kind of way, and then eventually in a more robotic physical way, as we are seeing right now. I mean, and then the question that you attach to it, like, don't we control it? We don't know. Maybe you can actually control it through the platform that you create. Like the receptor might limit what the intelligence can do. Clearly they're trying to control it, right? So that, but maybe they're like summoning these beings into.
Wasn't that one theory put forth by folks when they were talking about the CERN and what was going on over there with CERN? That, like, oh my gosh, we're going to be opening portals and summoning. I think at the end of the day, everybody would agree that we are in a battle in light versus dark, right?
Yeah.
No matter who you are, no matter where you are around the world, you can agree that there is a light and a dark. And I'm not trying to make a Star Wars reference here, Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I just think fundamentally there is a battle between light and dark, between good and evil. And that's really the big thing.
Yeah, but also there, right? Because so with the bigger picture, I often sort of get stuck in these religious or semi-religious discussions, either from a Muslim perspective or a Christian perspective or whatever perspective. And then, so for example, if you say it's a battle between good and evil, right? These terms are not very well defined, right? What do we actually mean when we say good or evil, right? For example, we do finance meets faith with Guy Malone. Great guy. He's also very big into Bitcoin and OG. But he really sees this from a very Christian perspective, and he thinks we're dealing with demons and the Nephilim and whatnot.
Sure.
And maybe that's true, right? But let's say they are demons or jinn or fill in blank.
Right.
What the hell is a jinn? What the hell is a demon? What does the word actually contain in extra information about the phenomenon, except that you can label it X, Y, Z, right? It doesn't give us any extra information, right? Unless you're a demonologist and you say, okay, this is this certain type of demon, then you go sort of into Buffy the Vampire Slayer territory, right? Where these entities all have personalities, and or the Catholic Church who does exorcisms, right? You also have a lot of priests right now going on podcasts that say like possession is real and exorcism is real, and we're actually driving out spirits, right? So that if that's true, then there's a manual that works, right? So those are kind of things that you can at least test, right? Because then you have a history and a backlog and an experience, and then you have more information. But when people put their heels down and they say it's demons or it's jinn or it's angels or it's whatever, right? It doesn't really give us more information than if they're gray or reptilian or whatever. It's like those are just labels that people put on stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I find it very fascinating. But you guys are interviewing me. I should be interviewing you guys.
It's a conversation. We can't help it. It's kind of what we do. It's you get the two of us together on a microphone with people. It's our default mechanism. I think it's our default setting.
Okay. So guys, before we sort of wrap it up, like what are your final thoughts, and is there anything else that we should talk about that we haven't talked about, or that you want to mention, or that you want to ask me? Is also fine, right?
Matt, go first. After you, sir.
Well, I just think that we are obviously living in interesting times. I think that the next 6 months, the remainder of the year, is going to be extremely bumpy. But I have faith that things will work out. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. We've got midterm elections in the U.S. Yeah. We've got, a clarity bill that looks like this could be coming through. And if not, then what does that mean for markets? We still have, now there's a potential. I just saw on my timeline an hour ago that now maybe there might be a peace talk coming now with Iran. Apparently, I don't know. I think that though, that the next 6 months through the end of the year is going to be very interesting time. I think we will look back at this year, especially 2026, we will look back at this year as like maybe one of those watershed moments where things happened, where we look at with what happened with Iran and we see what the Strait of Hormuz has actually done, and kind of what we see here with a little bit with Spain and Morocco. Again, that's a control and a choke point there at the Strait of Hormuz. And I think that is being, again, we're looking at geopolitical things played out where there are choke points that can influence the economy and markets. And so this is all really coming to a head. And the way that we deal with all of this and unpack this is going to have a long-lasting echo into the future. And what happens with digital assets around the world right now? We've seen Russia, we've seen Great Britain, we've seen all these other countries moving forward with adoption and putting in place regulations. So I think America, if they want to still be in that conversation, they need to do this. They will do this. It will happen probably, like a week from today. By a week from now, we'll probably have this done, I would think. But I'm not an expert, so don't hold me to that. But again, just to land my plane on this I think the next 6 months, it's going to be very bumpy, very volatile. So buckle up.
Do you think Trump will win?
Do I think that what?
Win the midterms? Like, will he keep control of the House and the Senate?
Right now, I think it's a toss-up. I think it really is a toss-up, and it's gonna come down to, I think the Save America Act, really, to a point. The voting ID is really something I think that is going to become even more center stage. So I think that is going to have an impact in these elections. Whether that gets passed or not as well, we'll remain to see, because again, we're up against the recess here in August.
Do you think it will also depend on Iran, like get with boots on the ground, or actually getting some kind of deal done with Iran, or retreating, or
I think a deal has to be done. Obviously, it's always the economy when we talk about elections. And right now we're seeing a Fed that isn't really indicating that they have a willingness to cut rates, especially going into an election where it would actually be very favorable for the administration. So I don't see how you get Kevin Warsh all of a sudden to, does he pull it? Does he do what they did? Like, what was that in 2024 where Powell cut rates to try and stimulate the economy to help the Dems win, but it didn't really work, did it? So I don't know if that would even work here. The market and the numbers aren't really showing right now that a cut is warranted, right? Although some people might like it. Is it really warranted? I don't know. So that's why I think between now and the end of the year, it's just going to be a really bumpy ride. Buckle up, grab the popcorn, and be safe.
Yeah. And also with AI, of course, because it's now sort of hitting the exponential curve.
Actually, I am actually all of this right now, this whole conversation, I've been AI. I am actually an AI avatar, and Matt is actually on a beach in Fiji with Ray-Ban goggles on, doing this all from there. So I'm just an AI.
So I'm talking to myself, basically.
Yes. Gosh, such a good question. Will Trump win the midterms? I like that question. I'm going to let Matt land on that macro. I'll take the micro. I think we need to continue building these conversations. Certainly, I think, Nick, we should do more of these with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this particular conversation. And I think it's about time, if Spaces doesn't work, if X isn't working for people as a platform to talk coherently and without trouble, we may need to start being unafraid to move from that platform to any other platform that will allow a steady stream. And if it means starting again, or it means losing part of the audience and part of that buzz, then so be it. There's always, recordings that you can put up on X. But my view for the next 6 months, 12 months in terms of what we're doing with conversation is just to grow these and also settle into getting some sponsors. There's a ton of value that can be had from these conversations. It doesn't matter how small they are. Actually smaller conversations convert a lot better at times, because the people that are often listening are the ones that are going to put action into motion. So from a micro point of view, when it comes to these conversations, which was the beginning part of our podcast today, I'm going to look forward to keep building, keep having more of those conversations, keep bringing fascinating speakers in, and keep teasing people like StephBot. Number one, Stephanie_Bus, as I see her. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Today. It is her birthday. Yeah, I'm outing it. I hope you had a wonderful birthday. And Trump will win the midterms. There is a wager in that, perhaps, in that sense. Very bold. I think Trump is showing his age. No, let's end with a bit of Trump trolling. I always love a bit of Trump trolling. He's starting to. I think we're coming to a bit of a moment in time when his shine appears to be going a little. And I think a lot of that is down to his age and his cognitive abilities. And if we were as focused as we were on the previous president's cognitive decline, which was absolutely valid, I think it's fair to say we should be as focused on the current president's cognitive decline. And does he win maybe by stepping aside and allowing someone who can form coherent sentences two after another, to take over rather than just, the rambling man that we have now, Grandpa.
Well, I follow Dr. G. He's like a forensic psychologist who sort of specializes in nonverbal communication, and he does sort of a lot of these analyses on criminals like Manson and you name it. Like he goes through all these sort of testimonies that they did, and then what kind of person are they? What can you see if they're lying or are they telling the truth, etc. He's also doing a lot of stuff on Trump. He also did on Biden, and but basically he's noticing the same thing as that. What you just touched upon is like that he noticed this year, and I think it started like late last year, that you see sort of like a cognitive decline in Trump. The way he speaks, and sort of the way he puts sentences together, and how he reacts. That there's a significant qualitative shift in sort of in what he did before and how he communicated and now. And on top of that, I just watched a short video about gray hairs because I'm getting gray hairs, and it turns out that you can actually reverse gray hair if you do it within a certain time span, and it has to do with stress. But so if you relieve stress, the hair follicles can still sort of regenerate. It's sort of like your body taking away energy from wherever it can. And it sort of first starts at your hair because it's sort of like low impact, high reward. But if you sort of lower your, especially sort of chronic stress level, then often the hair color returns to its original.
Or you can just wear a hat like me and nobody knows that you have gray hair. They just see it on your beard.
But what I wanted to tie it with the present, like, do you guys have noticed like any person who becomes president, if it's in Holland or let alone in the US, they become gray
right away.
Within, at the end of their term, they age like 10 years, 20 years. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. The pressure is something different. Keir Starmer, I think, came away unscathed in the grey department, but he's also stepped down. So, he stepped down. But yeah, the decline in anybody that takes office. I mean, if you look at Obama when he first took office, that fresh-faced young man versus the guy that left. I mean, it was quite. It was really noticeable.
Yeah, and us doing these spaces, I know why you're not showing your face, because you're not all gray, right?
all gray. I have no hair to go gray. I think it's widely known by now that my head is as shiny as a ping pong ball. So, there's no head up there to go gray. I do show myself on. Matt see me. You've seen me. Stefbot sees me every single week. He's
a handsome beast of a man. I'll tell you that. And I can say that as a strong heterosexual male. Okay, he's a handsome beast of a dude. He's a dude's dude.
A dude's dude. Yeah,
he is a dude's dude.
On legs. I look like I'm edible. But yeah, this has been a really, really good conversation, Nick. So I very much, I didn't know what to expect coming into it, and I very much appreciated it. Some really acute questions, and just a great, easygoing conversation that's blown by.
Yeah. Well, thanks, and I really enjoyed it too. And for the people who are not following you, but I think they are all following you already. Everybody in the chat, go follow Matt Hatter and Matt Case, the rock stars of QE, the backbone of QE. And I'm
more like the tailbone. I'm the tailbone. I'm near that end of it. I'm near that end.
You also did a show on Bitcoin Live, right, with Gerald? So you're basically also a Bitcoin liver.
Yeah, so, I'm an OG Bitcoin liver. Yeah,
that's cool. Hey guys, thank you for being on, and let's do it again.
Yeah, great job. Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate you. Have a good one.